Hello students, my name is Dr. Jyoti Prakash and I am Assistant Professor in the Department of Management, School of Management Sciences, Lucknow. Now welcome you all to the video lecture that is based on performance appraisal. It is basically the third video of performance appraisal. Now in this video lecture we will have a discussion on the modern methods that are used by a human resource manager or by the organization in giving appraisal to the individual. So in order to connect with the previous concept of performance appraisal, just have a little discussion or on the just go through the definition of performance appraisal. So we have understood that performance appraisal is basically a systematic process of assessing or evaluating the performance and progress of an employee on a given job and also his or her potential for future development. So performance appraisal is basically one of the important function or one of the important concept of human resource management that should be adopted very carefully, because it motivates a lot, either motivates or demotivates a lot to employees, and accordingly they can just hold or they can just take decision regarding giving their contribution towards the attainment of the goal of the organization. So in the previous topic, in the previous video we have discussion on the methods come under traditional methods. So now in this video lecture we will have a discussion on the modern methods, and the modern methods like assessment center, human resource accounting method, behavioral anchored rating scales, means in short we can say that bars, MBO and 360-degree appraisal. So just have a discussion on the methods one by one. So the first method is assessment center. So assessment center is basically a technique for evaluation, selection, development and training of personnel in an organization. So how this assessment center works? So process of assessment center is like that, like the first one is establishing the objective of the program, conducting detailed job analysis, defining dimensions to be assessed, designing physical facilities, selecting exercises, training of assessor, conducting of programs, evaluating participant feedback and follow up action. Means firstly, in order to assess the performance of the employees, firstly the human resource manager basically determine the objective of the program, that for what purpose he or she is going to assess the performance of the individual one, and then after they just try to gather information about the job. Means job analysis, obviously you know this particular concept, that job analysis is all about detailed information about the job in terms of the duties and responsibilities and also the characteristic and the qualification and the personal traits required by the individual in order to perform that particular job. So whatever the purpose that for what that assessment is being done, accordingly the concerned person or the human resource manager just hold out or just try to gather information about the job, about the individual job related to the individual, means the individual are performing which type of job. So accordingly they can just take decision further. Next is defining dimension to be assessed. After having information about the job, they take decision or they just define, means which dimension they are they have been assigned by the organization for assessing the performance of the individual. Accordingly the physical facilities, whatever the physical facilities required in order to perform this assessment task, the physical facilities should be designed. What are the exercises, so that the performance of the individual employees can be identified. Who are the assessor? They are basically, they have been given the responsibility for assessing the performance of the individual one. Next, these are basically the planned phase. These activities are means from 1 to 6 are related to some planned phase. Under these phases the planning is being done, how assessment will be performed. The next 7th step is conducting the program, means whatever the planning is being done, now next the time comes, means at this stage you have to basically conduct the program, and after conducting the program obviously you will evaluate, means if you are a human resource manager and if you have been given the responsibility for assessment center. So finally you will evaluate the performance of the participants, and whatever the feedback you have obtained after evaluating the performance, means here you are able to take decision regarding those individual will be the good one and they are eligible to get appraisal and acknowledged by the organization. And obviously by going through these stages or steps, you will identify some weak performance too. So accordingly what suggestions and what advices you will give to them, so that accordingly they can also give their 100% productivity in the achievement of the goal of the organization. So these are basically the steps come under assessment center. Means if you as a student, means if you are I am assuming you students like the future HR managers. So if you have been given the responsibility of conducting this assessment center, so you have to go through these stages, and after going, obviously you will give an answer that who are the individual and who are the individual that they are eligible to get appraisal from the organization and who are not basically. So the next method come under modern method is human resource accounting method. Under this method, performance is basically judged in terms of cost and contribution of the employees. Cost consists of expenditure on human resource planning, recruitment, selection, induction, training, compensation. Contribution of training is money, value of labor, productivity. Difference between the cost and contribution will reflect the performance of employees. So what you know about accounting? Accounting is all about giving you a picture about giving you a statement or giving you basically a picture about how well or how good you are in terms of your financial condition, and that basically gives you that picture basically gives you with the help of the balance sheet. And in balance sheet you have seen that all the assets or liabilities are expressed in terms of what? Money. So human resource, under human resource accounting method, every individual or every human resource is expressed in terms of money, and accordingly the human resource manager takes the decision whether that individual will be treated like assets or some which are the individual who are treated like liabilities, and all the individual basically are expressed in terms of money, and how that money or that worth will be determined, how much cost the company has invested in terms of the recruitment and the selection, induction, training program, and how productivity, how much productivity that individual has obtained or given in terms of the attainment of the goal of the objective. So whatever the difference, means if the difference is good, means the contribution is more as cost, so obviously that individual deserves appraisal from the organization, and if the cost is more as comparison to the contribution, means the cost incurred by the human resource manager by the organization is more, and the contribution given by the employees are not as fulfilling the cost. So somehow that those individuals are not eligible to get appraisal from the organization. So under this method, in totality we can say that in this method every individual of the organizations are basically expressed in terms of assets and liabilities and also in money, and decision can be taken, means those are treated like or seems like assets for the organization. So accordingly the organization can take decision regarding appraising the performance or of those individuals who are representing themselves as assets, and those who are treated like liabilities by the organization. Accordingly decision can be taken by the organization whether to give appraisal or not. The next method come under modern method is behaviorally anchored rating scale, and it is also called bars. So they are basically the rating scales whose scale points are determined by statements of effective and ineffective behaviors. They are said to be behaviorally anchored in that the scales represent a range of descriptive statements of behavior varying from least to the most effective. Again it is a scale used by the human resource manager or by the organization in assessing the performance of the individual or the employees of the organization. So a particular scale will be drawn, and the behavior related to the work performance of the individual will be given, and the evaluator just gives rate or just give the point, and accordingly whatever the results that will accordingly the concerned person or the evaluator take decision whether to give appraisal or not. So, just give a more clear view about the behaviorally rating scale. Here is a scale given for a customer service executive or a customer service scale. So, here the behavior is either, the behavior will be either outstanding, satisfactory and unsatisfactory. Satisfactory means somehow whatever the expected that individual or the employees or the organization are giving in the same way. Unsatisfactory, not as much expected, and outstanding is all about giving contribution by the concerned person beyond the expectation. So, here is the example given or taken for a customer service representative. So, here is a scale because it is a method. What is the method? Behaviorally rating anchored rating scale. So, here is a scale which represents or which denotes 5 points, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and 5 represents outstanding. Obviously, 5 is the maximum one. So, it represents the outstanding. 3 is satisfactory, means somehow an average thing, and 1 is the lowest number. So, it somehow represents the state is unsatisfactory. Like use positive phrases to explain product, means whenever a customer calls to that customer service representative, that customer representative basically use some positive notes or positive phrases in order to explain the features of the product. So, obviously, in that behavior that individual should is basically that individual deserves a 0.5, means outstanding. So, accordingly all the behavior are basically judged or given against the against this scale, and whatever the point means the maximum number of 5s. So, obviously, that individual deserves appreciation from the organization, and the more number of 1 somehow gives a picture to the concerned evaluator or to the human resource manager that that individual is somehow weak and not performing as per the expectation or as per the given standard. So, it is the concept covered under like behaviorally anchored rating scale. The next method come under modern method is MBO. Obviously, in your first semester in Essential of Management, you have gone through this particular concept, management by objective. So, MBO was a concept developed by Peter Drucker in 1954, and MBO has been defined as a process where the superior and subordinate managers of an organization, they are they just form out or they just determine the common goals, define each and individual major areas of responsibility, means which individual is responsible for which task, that is being determined, and also the results expected from each and every one. So, that whatever the purpose or whatever the objective of the company that can be achieved by the employees, and they can just help out in achieving this particular purpose. So, what are the steps in come under or following the concept of or the method of MBO, like setting the organizational goals, defining performance targets, performing targets and communicating feedback. Means the first step come under MBO is here. In this method, firstly the goal should be determined in a very smart manner. Means why I use SMART? SMART means S for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for realistic, and T for obviously timeliness, means timely. Whatever the objective that the company holds or that the company is carrying out, that should be obtained in a very timely manner, and whatever the goals that you are going to obtain or going to achieve, that should be specific, that should not be in vague, that should be written in a clear words. So, everybody just hold a clear thing or a clear communication that what he or she has to perform in order to achieve the particular goal, and measurable, that can be measured by, so that that result or that thing can be obtained. Realistic, the goal that you are determining in helping the organization in attainment of the goal, that goal must be realistic. So, firstly, whatever the goal for what you are working or you are performing this particular function, that goal must be SMART, and that goal must be set out or must be determined in a very smartly manner. Then after you have to define, means now goal is here, now the end goal or the thing that you have to achieve, that is being determined. Then after that how that goal be achieved, that communication should be given to each and everyone concerning to that group or concerning to that function. And accordingly what after having a communication about the achievement of the target, they just perform. And what lastly, as a evaluator one, you have to communicate the feedback about the each and everyone, means those who are achieving that given target, those who are achieving the given goals. So, obviously they are eligible to get appraisal from the organization, and those who are not. So, accordingly you just give a feedback how to rectify their behaviors and performance, so that they can contribute their efforts in achieving the goal of the organization for what they have been hired, or for what this particular, for what they have been assigned the duties and required duties and responsibility. So, it is all about the concept of MBO, means management by objective. In this particular method, just have a look. In this particular method, firstly a SMART goal should be determined, means a realistic goal, a measurable goal and a specific goal should be determined, and that goal must be communicated to the concerned one or to the employees. And after having a communication or after having an information about what they have to perform, they are performing, and after completion of a certain time period, they are also giving a picture about their performance, that those who are good one and those who are the achievers, those those have contributed a lot in achievement of the goal. So, accordingly decision, and those who are not, so accordingly decision can be taken regarding giving appraisal to those individual, to the individual, whether giving appraisal to them or not. So, it is the concept of MBO. The next method come under performance appraisal is 360-degree appraisal. 360-degree appraisal is 360-degree, if you see that it is all about a round, the value of a circle is somehow similar to 360-degree. So, if you see this particular picture and this particular picture is 360-degree, means the feedback is collected from all the people to whom you are surrounded, means components of 360-degree appraisals are like self appraisal, superior appraisal, subordinate appraisal, peer appraisal and client appraisals. Means all those people who are somehow related directly or indirectly related to you, from each and every one the feedback of yours, means if you are the one and if you are surrounded by you have to interact with different bodies from time to time, and in order to perform the assigned duties and responsibility. So, the feedback from each and every one to whom you are surrounded, and accordingly whatever the feedback they have given about you and about that individual, the decision can be taken regarding giving appraisal to that individual or not, basically. So, 360-degree appraisal is somehow covering the concept or covering the components like self appraisal, means the feedback regarding the self, or means if you are the one, if you are the employee and the human resource manager is just thinking that the feedback, the appraisal should be given to you. So, feedback is also given from you, taken from you, that how good you are in terms of fulfilling the expectation of the company. So, the first one is self appraisal. The superior appraisal, obviously he or she is your immediate boss. So, he or she knows everything about your behavior, about your strength, about your weaknesses. So, they are also giving feedback about you. Subordinate appraisal means they are the one who are subordinates, and peer appraisal are the one who are somehow working on the same line, and they are also knowing something, and they are knowing obviously lots of things about your performance, about your strong point, about your weakness point, and accordingly they can just give their feedback to the concerned evaluator about the performance of the of an individual one. And the client appraisal means if you are someone who has been given responsibility or who has been assigned the duty of interacting with outsiders, and means you have, suppose if you are a sales executive and you have to interact with the retailers and the shopkeepers from time to time. So, the feedback about your behavior and your performance should also be taken from the clients of yours that you are interacting to them on a daily basis, and in order to perform your duties and responsibilities. So, 360 degree appraisal, we can say that gives a true picture or give a genuine picture about the performance of yours, that how good you are in performing the duties and responsibility, and in interacting with others, in justifying the roles, and in fulfilling the expectation of the company. So, it is all about a particular method comes under modern method. So, as I told earlier that obviously human resource management or performance appraisal, basically a function should be performed or is performed by a human being or a person. So, some errors obviously in evaluating or in judging or in appraising the performance of the employees, some errors may arise because it is not done by a machine, it is done by a human being. So, human being is has certain emotions, certain feelings, some sort of absenteeism, we can say that sometimes they are not honest and sincere towards the duty. So, some errors may occur while performing this particular function in the organization. So, what are those errors which may occur in performance appraisal? Like the first one is partiality. Partiality, the name of itself refers that here the evaluator gives a partial, introduces some partial, means they are somehow good one to some of the individual, and they are not supportive, they are not showing their appropriate behaviors to some other employees of the organization. So, in this error we can say that the superior or the immediate boss basically supports a lot to some of the one and supports does not supports to some other employees. So, in this case some errors may arise because those who are good one and those who are favorite to you. So, you are only looking for them as a human resource manager, you are only looking for them. So, you ignore some of the good performers in fact. So, it is one of the error in performance appraisal. The next one is stereotyping. Stereotyping is some how we can say that error that is related to the characteristic of an a group in fact, means if the evaluator has perceived that or observe one of the individual of that group is not good. So, he or she basically perceives all the member of that group in the same way, but it may happen or it may be that one of the member or two or three of the member of that particular group are good one or the good performers, those who are eligible to get appraisal from the organization, but because of that perception that the human resource manager has hold up by seeing the behavior of an employee by the organization. So, this particular error occurs. Halo effect is all about a perception holding about one individual trait of an individual. Suppose when you are sitting in a cabin and that individual has entered without asking any permission to you. So, you hold being a human resource manager, you just hold out that that individual is not courteous and that individual is not having a good behavior, now does not show a good behavior towards the boss. But in totality it may happen that that individual is good enough or maybe good enough in doing or in performing other activities so others. So, halo effect is all about having a perception about a particular trait or a single trait of an individual, and on that single by perceiving a single trait of that individual, who perceive the overall personality of that individual in the same way. So, somehow these may errors occur in performance appraisal. The next one is distribution error. Distribution, there are three types of distribution like severity, central and leniency. Severity is all about when the appraisal evaluates all or almost all the staff below the average rating. Central means you are somehow not so sincere, means you are very casual. So, you just give everyone the average rate, not so high, not so good. So, you just give a average rate, and leniency is all about you just give beyond the or above the average rating, means because of your casual effort you perform these type of distribution error and somehow does not represents a true picture or genuine picture about the performance of the employees. So, these are basically some of the errors in performance appraisal. The next one is proximity errors. Proximity is all about nearness, means those individual who are who are close to you, you are just giving appraisal to that individual and you are ignoring to those who are not nearness to you, who are not near to you. So, it is also one of the error. Recency error is all about one error in which you are just perceiving the recent activity of the individual and you are ignoring the previous activities of the individual. So, it may happen that due to some physical activity hazardness and the physical and some personal problem in his or her life, he or she is not performing in recent times, but in earlier time that individual or some of the employees have performed in a very better manner. So, it is also one of the error, means you are only perceiving or taking consideration the recent activity of the individual and on that basis you are giving appraisal to, you are taking decision regarding giving appraisal to the individual or not. Compare and contrast means everyone is individual, you cannot take a decision by comparing one to another, because one is good in some other trait and another one is good in another trait. So, you just consider all the trait of the individual and if you are considering and if you are comparing one individual to another individual. So, you are not giving a or you are not taking appropriate decision regarding giving appraisal to the individual. And personal biasness is somehow we can say that a human resource manager is basically a human being. So, some jealousy and some disappointment may be into the heart of that individual and that basically comes while taking decision regarding giving appraisal to the individual. So, these are basically some of the errors come under performance appraisal process. If you want to get more information about the particular topic, you just go through these books. I hope you will like this content, this particular video content based on performance appraisal. That is all in this topic. Thank you, students.